This is the Ted Wallisham Podcast. Brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And Halenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And now, here's Ted.
My guest today has been a good friend, confidant, and co-conspirator for, I think, something like 30 plus years now. He is a native of Jefferson, Indiana. He has accomplished more in his life, still moving forward, than most of us can imagine. He is a musician, composer, arranger, producer, as well as photographer, radio host, and author. He began his musical pursuit in earnest at the age of 16 after receiving a half scholarship, we'll ask him about that, to study under the legendary Oscar Peterson before returning to his home in Indiana. He then pursued his musical career and ended up becoming musical director for Linda Ronstadt, Janis Joplin, the Pointer Sisters, Martha Reeves, Craig Russell, and even Carol Burnett. In 1969, he arrived in this country as a conscientious objector of the Vietnam War. In the past 2 years, he has written four books, a memoir entitled Through the 60s, an American rock and roll story, plus 3 editions of Talk, Conversations in All Keys, the latest subtitled American Music. Bill King, nice to see you, my friend.
Hey, it's great to see you again, Ted.
How you been?
Oh, yeah, I've been really good, man.
Good.
Being real cautious here, you know?
Yeah, no kidding. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things here because there's so many aspects to your life. But what I also want to talk about, your love of sports, your love of cycling. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about photography. But when we start talking about your work as an author, I'll refer to you as William, because all your books are published under William King, not Bill King. Why?
Because I wanted to separate that part of my life, right? I wanted to separate and put it into that side of things, because I think there's, you can get too much of a person under one name, right? Under Bill King. There's just a lot there. And I look at it and I say, maybe people are just tired of that. I'll just go under this and it'll be sort of a fresh start in this area.
Your dad was a big influence on you in that he was a big lover of music and introduced you and your brother to music.
Yeah, he did. He started taking us out to concerts when we were really young. And I would
big name concerts.
Yeah. The first one was 1962. He took us out to see the Modern Jazz Quartet, and then Duke Ellington Orchestra, Jimmy Smith. Oh, I could go down to Cannonball, Miles Davis, Nancy Wilson, Count Basie a couple of times. Yeah, he was totally into it. But you know what it was? It was when he was on leave from World War II and he met my mom. They were in New York City and they went to the Metropole to see Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
So that was like a trip when he kind of told us that, we're walking along the street and we see Buddy Rich is playing there. And he said, I had to go in there. So they went in there and he couldn't believe it, right?
And who was the first musician to inspire you to pursue a musical career?
I just said, you know what it was? Anything, all the classics, because, basically when I began, I studied classical music, right? And that was the thing. I went into conservatory in Louisville, the Academy of Music, and it was all classical. And then it began to have a mix of jazz. But I spent a lot of my time, we had a Carnegie library in my hometown, and they had the scores of Beethoven and Mozart, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, and all of those. And I learned to read the scores. So, but I also had great teachers too that taught me from the ground up everything.
And you had one of your piano teachers was a pianist with W.C. Handy, who wrote, I believe, St. Louis Blues March.
Yeah, she was. She was my first one.
Wow.
She was already in her 70s, right?
Yeah.
And she was an African-American woman. She lived up on the Pike, and she was just a trip. And we go up there to have our 50-cent a week lesson. And but the best thing she did was, I wanted to play her piano the first day I got there. But I didn't know how to play piano, but I wanted to touch her piano. We didn't touch that piano for like 2 or 3 weeks because she made us go home and do theory. Know the sharps and flats, find them on the staff. She gave us all these assignments, and we had to memorize all that. So that kind of got something out of the way that a lot of people don't get out of the way at the beginning. Know exactly where the notes on the stabs and where your fingers are on the instrument, right?
Yeah.
So
I think for a lot of young people, being taught that way would have been just like a massive turnoff. It's like I don't want to do this. I want to play. I don't want to read. I don't care about theory.
Yeah, we were kind of confused about it all anyway. So it was just like, okay, this is the way we go about it. We didn't really know what the whole steps were, but we know we had to learn. But it went quick. We made it through that, and then she let me touch the piano, and the piano was just like a barnyard piano. I mean, that thing hadn't been tuned in 50 years. So it kind of almost destroyed my head, but she got it tuned once in the 2 years. And even when she got it tuned, I was so thrilled to play it. It still sounded the same.
So, as Bill King is my guest, as I mentioned in the introduction, you began your musical pursuit in earnest when you were 16 years of age. You received a half scholarship to study under the legendary Oscar Peterson. What the hell is a half scholarship? You use one hand only?
You know what? Yeah.
Only the white keys?
Yeah. Only the white keys. Ronnie Hawkins used to accuse me of playing just the black keys. But no, the thing was that we had a subscription to Downbeat that we started getting about 1961. Yeah. So 1963, there came this ad up. It said, study with Oscar Peterson at the Advanced School of Contemporary Music. Send us in with a tape. You may be able to get a scholarship. So I had a little trio thing. We played a little Beatles tune, Ticket to Ride or something. And I sent it in, and they said, you got a half scholarship. So that paid for half of the tuition. And then the rest was just finding a place to stay here. And so my parents found somebody through the church. Yeah. So I could stay at her place. And I had been saving money, right, from playing these little gigs and stuff. So I had about $600 in the bank. And so I had the money to do it and pay for it myself.
Well, how intimidating was it to work under Oscar Peterson? I mean, he wasn't the legend that he was later in life, but he was still a huge name.
He was already really well known. It was, the whole place was intimidating because Bill Nimmons was there too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just, I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid. And I'm scared to death of everybody because everybody in there was like, there's only one other kid around 17. The rest were like in their 20s and 30s. Mm. So they were adults and they abused us, you know? Yeah, shut up, kid. Can't ask the question, mister? Shut up, kid. Go away. And we were like, oh, man, Mr. Oscar. No, but Oscar was great to us. So were the staff. And what happened? You had to audition. And so they had D, C, B, and A levels, right? So I got into C level. I was just a kid, right? And what was so funny was in the audition, they played a blues, right? And I went, oh, I got this. That's a 12-bar blues. Then they played something else, and I had no idea what it was, right? And it went by so fast, and I really felt like I was lost. And in jazz, it was another structure. It was rhythm changes. Yeah. Now, those at a higher level would know what rhythm changes because it's a form, right? Yeah. So at the end of it, I just walked over and said, excuse me, sir, what just went past me there? They said, well, you should know, son. That was rhythm changes. I said, I better learn that.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was great. And as I said in one book, it was just, you hear something, but you need to see it. You need to see what the hands do because they're big hands, right?
Yeah. So
finally he gets to class and he starts playing. And I'm sitting down at the end of the piano. I'm going, oh, my goodness, I can't do that.
Well, it turns out you could. Bill King is my guest. He is author, musician. His latest book, by the way, is called, it's a third edition of a trilogy called Talk, Conversations in All Keys, and this latest edition subtitled American Music. And we'll get to that eventually. So you finish this part-time scholarship, this half scholarship with us. Yeah. You go back to Indiana. You start playing, fast forward, you end up being a musical director for all these iconic artists in the 60s and 70s. So let's go through all of these and get your quick impressions on them. Okay. Linda Ronstadt intimidated you, but in a positive way, because she was, I believe you said, quote, so damn beautiful.
Yeah, that was too much for me. No, I'm playing in Greenwich Village at this piano bar, right? And her manager comes in and he sees me. And he starts talking to me, and he also manages Frank Zappa too, which was just the other extreme.
No kidding.
Yeah, he says, would you like to do this? And I said, of course I would like to do this. Okay, we're going to give you $150 a week. And oh man, prime money, right? So anyway, I get hired for it. And me and Lee Underwood, who was her guitar player, we drive to California together. And just to have the greatest time and get out there. And then it's a whole thing of finding a place. And I found a place and everything. And then it was our first rehearsal. And I just remember sitting on the piano bench, and she comes in. There's 5 of the musicians, and she comes in, and she just looks unbelievable. And she comes down and does one of those real cute little things where she sits next to me on the piano bench, and she says something to me, and I have a stroke right there on the spot. I had a beauty stroke, Yeah. And I looked at her and I went, you're probably the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, because I come from Indiana. Remember this. and I'm trying to talk to her, and she's saying really kind of cute things to me, and I try to talk to her, and I'm just stumbling over words. And then something. Then we got along really well, and she says, I need to learn some new tunes. I said, I got one. So I said, okay, here's one I just did, and I had just recorded a demo of it in New York with Herb Abramson, who was the founder of Atlantic Records and stuff. So I played it for her, and she goes, I love that song, so we got to do that. And I'm okay, I'm so in with this song. Yeah. So we did that. Then we come back next day. We run through tunes, and then she says, let me give you a ride. So I said, okay. So she drives me over to RCA Studios, and I go over, and it's Lester, what's his name? It's the brothers from the band that did War, the Chambers Brothers. So I hang out with there, and then I'm feeling like, I'm kind of in the wrong place. And she goes, no, let's go up the coast. So we got the car, we drive up the coast and everything. And we come back for day 3. She's like less interested. Day 4, she has no interest in rehearsing. She wants to go and stay in the beach communities and hang out. So it was kind of like in and out, trying to, you're in the beautiful weather, you're in this thing. And it's also trying to sort out where you're going with your life. And she was getting tunes from Adam Mitchell here in Toronto, and it had more of a country thing to it. So it was just a process of saying, I'm breaking from the Stone Ponies. I'm going to this new thing. It's like Janis, the same thing. I'm leaving Big Brother. I'm going to something new, but I'm not exactly there yet. I'm in this transition time,
So here she is. She's somewhat of a, I guess you'd call it country rock, I guess today is what they would call that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there's Janis Joplin, hard rock.
Yeah.
What was she like?
She was a lot of fun. It's another one of those things where
she would intimidate me.
She was like so forward and such a ball of joy, because me and Brad Campbell, that from here, the last words, when we went to meet her place on Noe Street, we like to kill ourselves getting there, because it was like one of those steep inclines in San Francisco Hills, where she lived way up the top. And by the time we got there, we were about to collapse. And we got to the front door, and this dog came at us, right? I thought the dog was going to...
She couldn't drive a Standard.
No, that's the nights out, right? With the Mercedes, right? But we got there, and as soon as we got there, she was like, oh, joint, guys, come in here, have a joint, have some Southern Comfort, have a little bit of this. And she was running around being like the party host, right? And she was pretty much like that all the time. And we just laughed, had a great time. We went rehearsing. And the rehearsals were like almost started off good, and then they just saw fall apart because people were just screwed up. And then she'd say she loved to play pool. And so she asked me and Brad, she goes, you guys play pool? And we said, yeah. She goes, all right, meet me tonight. She said, I'll pick you up. And she shows up in that Mercedes Benz, and she can't drive it. So we're driving around San Francisco, and the thing is chugging. It sounds like it's going to die, and she's going up the hills, and she can't get it in the right gear. and Brad's going, my God, this is a great car. You're just destroying it.
So Janis Joplin, so her prayers are answered. Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? God gets her a Mercedes Benz, but forgot to tell her how to learn how to drive a stick.
Yeah, we should have been. Lord, can't you teach me how to drive a Mercedes Benz? Just add an extra verse.
Yeah. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I was thinking about this last night. Why would someone like Janis Joplin need a musical director? Because I never imagined rock musicians or rock groups having a musical director per se. Like, what would your role have been there?
She didn't have one before. Okay, so this is a band that is put together by management.
Okay.
Because she's thinking about Stax Records. She's thinking about Carla Thomas, Otis Redding, and she wants to move in it because she began as a bluegrass artist and then a blues artist, and then sort of worked her way into this other thing. Is she just loved all those records that came out, down south, that were all the R&B, funk, soul thing. But she kind of had a sound in her head where she could combine that with her kind of edgy kind of vocals and stuff. So she needed somebody to bridge that. And that was my experience because I knew all the tunes, I knew the feels and that. And so when I got into it, my job was to start organizing the horns, write the Memphis style horn charts,
Right.
and run the rhythm section like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I mistakenly referred to her as saying that she was hard rock. Her music wasn't hard rock. It was more R&B, blues, soul, rock.
Yeah, it was like a blues rock.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move on now to the Pointer Sisters.
Yeah.
Is it difficult working with three individuals? More difficult than it is working with one individual? I mean, are you one of them taking you aside and saying, my sisters don't know what the hell they're talking about?
No, there were four of them.
Or four of them, sorry.
Oh no, they were an army of four. Let me tell you, here's my first moment with them. I walk in and they go, "So you're Bill?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "So who you worked with before?" And I went, "Martha Reeves, 4-part harmony on Dancing in the Street."
Yep.
They started singing, and all of them hit it, and I went, "Oh my God, they know these tunes." They go, "We love Martha." Next thing you know, it's the next tune, of Martha. They went about through 4 songs of Martha, and they're walking around dancing at the same time. I'm going, "This is where I belong."
Yeah.
No, we got along for the most part really well, but there was a lot of internal conflict because of Bonnie Pointer. She had her issues, and June Pointer was just coming back into the group after she had like a breakdown in Vegas prior to this. So she had left the group. And so there was like the two sisters, Ruth and Anita, held everything together. They knew that they had to be the ones to be strong enough to resist this thing falling apart, right? So they kept up everything. They kept the whole thing in motion. They were very serious about the music, putting it together. They had children. The other two didn't. The other two had really some serious personal issues. But once they got on stage, all that was forgotten. All that disappeared.
Yeah.
But, I would say 99% of the time it was a lot of fun and they were terrific. The only thing was after they left a really stable management company and went to another really doinky management company, that's when things went awry. Right. Because, we were treated like gold by the first group. You were part of it. Then the next group was, they're the side band. Put them at the hotel, like 5 miles out of town. Right. Yeah. we went from being having a suite in Harrah's at the MGM Grand to being at the DI 500 in Vegas down the road somewhere.
Yeah. Now here's a complete departure here. The great comedian, the brilliant comedian, Carol Burnett. You worked with her as her
with the Pointer Sisters. Okay, we were part of their show, and we did it for a month. So we were in Las Vegas for 2 weeks, and then we were here for 2 weeks. And the beauty of that was that it was the music director of that was Peter Matz, who was our music director. He was the music director for Streisand, did all her albums, arranged and all that. And me and Christine, we just bonded with him. And I always say that he was that point in my life when I learned to be a music director, when I learned how to treat an orchestra or a band or how to relate to them. Because prior to that, and I would have players, I was so serious, people would say, I almost fell over on the stand today when you gave me that look. And I go, "What look?" And they go, "Well, that looked like you're going to shoot me." And I said, "No, I wasn't thinking that." And then when I got with Peter Matz, he smiled at everybody, all the orchestra. When something was wrong, he goes, can we just run through that once more? And I went, oh, that works so well.
You told me a story years ago when we worked together about Carol Burnett and how your son Jesse, who's a great accomplished musician on his own.
Oh, yes.
He was just a little tyke when you were working, and Carol Burnett was part of that whole vast ensemble, the Vegas production. And she babysat him for a bit.
Yeah, we went up to, this was one of the amazing points in my life. We had to go rehearse the show before we went to Las Vegas, right? Yeah. So we went to CBS headquarters, and I went there, and Christine was in Arizona, so I had to take Jesse with me, and he's like 2 or 3, right? And I go into CBS, and the first thing security goes, you can't bring this kid in here. And I went, oh, but he's my kid. They go, no, but you can't bring him in here. And so they called up to Joe, her husband, and I forget, he was also the producer of the show.
Right.
And he came down, he goes, it's just a kid. What are you doing, idiots? Let him in.
Really?
Everybody did. And so we go upstairs, and I walk into, he goes, it's just down there in the hallway. So I started walking down the hallway, and the first thing I looked in this window, and there's Archie Bunker. And there's the whole thing rehearsing. And they're standing there, Edith Bunker and Gene Stapleton and Rob Reiner. The four of them are there standing reading scripts. And I'm looking through the window, and I'm telling Jesse.
They're shooting All in the Family on one of the stages.
Yeah, they're just through the window. So I walk past that, and the next one, there's Fred Sanford. They're rehearsing. And I said, hey, there they are, man. And I couldn't believe it. Then we had the big room at the end of the hall, the big rehearsal room. And I went in there, and there's Harvey Korman, there's Vicki Lawrence, there's what's his name, the other guy, the comic, Tim Conway, and Carol, and they had the big couch set out. And I walked in. As soon as I walked in, she goes, "Was that the cutest little boy I ever saw?" And she comes over and says, "Give me that boy," and I gave it to her. And I never got him back. So she did the whole rehearsal, the comedy bits with him in one arm, and her walking around the room doing the bits and the singing thing when it had to be done and all that stuff. And I went, man, this is an amazing woman.
Yeah,
just an amazing woman.
What a great story. My guest is Bill King, and from here on in, William King. William M. King. He's the author of 4 books in the last 2 years, one of which is a memoir, and then a trilogy of books, all called Talk, Conversations in All Keys. The latest one, volume 3, is about American music. And I picked out 5 different chapters here that I want to talk about, because otherwise this show will last longer than my career. Bobby McFerrin, the man who had such a huge hit with Don't Worry, Be Happy, was also the man who sang the theme for the Bill Cosby Show. Yes. You interviewed him back in 1988 when Cosby was still a beloved individual prior to all the accusations that have been hurled at him since that time. Did he ever say anything? You don't talk about it in the book, but did he ever talk about Cosby at all?
No. It was
it may have just been a gig.
You know how interviews go, right? So this interview was kind of uncomfortable because he was in my house, right?
Really?
Yeah, he came to the house. It was like, I think Blue Note or wherever it was. They were trying to get him around, and he's there with his wife at the time, right? And I got my wife, right? So we're thinking, hey, this is nice social thing. And he just sort of sat there and said, okay, next question. And I'm thinking, So you know what it was? I had to really think about what to ask him, because he's kind of like reserved, and so I had to bring something out of him, or I was going to leave that interview with nothing. But he finally said, "Oh, this guy's being good to me. I'll talk to them."
Yeah.
So I, sometimes
I hate those interviews.
Well, we're not Barbara Walters, right?
Yeah.
I don't go for the throat.
Yeah.
So I would never dare do that with him. So my thing was just, I got to do this, but there's the music side of it. He wants to talk about music, so let's talk the music.
Yeah.
So there's why I stayed. Then I got good stuff.
There's a fascinating quote here from Bobby McFerrin regarding drummers. Quote, "Drummers fascinate me with all the things they do, left and right foot, left and right hands. It's impossible. You can't divide your mind into 4 different activities at once, which is what drummers do. I mean, they got a left foot, a right foot, a left hand, a right hand, and in some cases they sing and drum at the same time. To me, like I'm the worst dancer in the world. I mean, I would probably just collapse a set of drums in about a minute and a half.
Yeah, you know something, but that came from the fact that I watched him play drums on his chest.
Yeah.
And he would beat rhythm patterns out on his chest, and that's what got me thinking about, how much experience had he had with the drums, or was this, it's so common now. The rhythm thing is so common with everybody that, with beatbox, which we went through that period where, everybody used their voice and the throat to make sounds and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Very convincing too. Where he just went out there by himself in concert. It was just him on stage.
Yeah.
And he used his chest and he used his voice in a different way. So he could use create the whole effect of a band by just using what he had, physically.
More of the Ted Wallisham podcast after this.
Okay, here we go down to visit our friend Tom Mahalik at Tom's Place, 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market in Toronto. Tom, of course, has the best selection of suits in the city of Toronto. But now that the winter is upon us, Tom, you need to put something on top of that beautiful suit when you go outside, and you've got some great coats.
We have some great coats that are 50 off. I just like to tell you guys a little story. I was going to switch the car at night, but then I changed my mind. I leave early in the morning, and I said to my wife, don't worry, darling, I will move the cars. Well, I went and I moved the cars. Took me about an hour. I had my sport jacket on, my beautiful sweater, and my scarf. But it wasn't enough. I was freezing. So in between trying to move the cars, I said, I got to go back to the house and grab one of those coats, one of those fabulous Tom's Place coats that are 50% off. Huge selection of coats that are 50% off, and they're only $249. I grabbed one of those coats. I put it on. I went back to the car. I didn't know how to reverse it. It took me another half an hour. But it was fine because I had my coat, I had my sweater, I had my scarf, I had my beautiful sport jacket, and a warm pair of pants. So it didn't bother me. So my wife asked me in the morning, Tom, what took you so long? Well, I said, I didn't know how to reverse it. I'll never do it again. I will listen to my wife, and I will switch while she's still there.
Tom's Place. Drop by. Coats, suits, jackets, sweaters, everything you need for the cold weather. 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Hey, let me take a moment to tell you about my friends at Helenda's. They are the meat people. I've been a fan of their products for years now, and without a doubt, they make some of the best sausage in Ontario. They are multiple award winners, having captured the Ontario's finest meat competition's coveted Award of Excellence on 3 occasions, in addition to dozens of individual product awards. Helenda's has also received the Grand Champion ribbon at the past 2 Royal Winter Fair's ready-to-eat meat snack competitions. So whether you're preparing a charcuterie board or a full-blown sit-down dinner for your friends or family, you'll find Helenda's award-winning products at fine meat shops throughout the province, now including selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland stores, along with their 7 Helenda's locations. Their barbecued kielbasa is my favorite. On a fresh bun with horseradish, it is out of this world. But don't just take my word for it. Judge for yourself. On your barbecue, in your kitchen, or straight from the refrigerator. Helenda's, the way sausage should taste.
Now back to Ted and his guest.
The book is called Conversation Talk, Conversations in All Keys, Volume 3, American Music. The author, William King, Bill King. It's all about musicians, and then you come to one chapter, and I look and I go, Steve Allen.
Yeah.
For most people, Steve Allen is the guy who was the guy who created The Tonight Show, not a musician, and yet he was an extremely prolific writer.
Yeah, he was quite the composer.
Yeah.
He was a pianist too.
Yeah.
I think you might have read also in there where he had that challenge from that school. How many songs can you write in a day? I could write 400 or something.
Yeah.
Now, out of that 400, I would guarantee you all 400 were crap. Right? It's just like well, I can, I'll just throw out a verse and I write some melodies. I got a song. And that's what he was doing, right? But, he wrote, this could be the start of something big. I wrote the theme for the Tonight Show, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he had some songs that became massive hits that, he dealt in volume.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about him was the fact that it was a time when you could say, all right, let's have Thelonious Monk on TV. And, you have no idea what this guy's going to do on TV.
Yeah.
Right? So you could have some of these classic jazz guys who were just totally out there on TV. And it could it's like he had Frank Zappa on and played the bike.
Yeah.
Right? He just said, okay, let's try this. And then all this stuff about, I told him, I said, you were gluing chest hair on yourself. You were having oatmeal baths and stuff like that. This was like Letterman many years.
And Letterman admitted years later that that Steve Allen was one of his great inspirations. One of the things I find fascinating about Steve Allen, and as an interviewer yourself, you do as much research as you can. You go to as many sources as you can. But in his case, you didn't have to because he sent you reams of background information.
He sent me 6 binders.
Wow.
And it was like, I got a word for this. I did this show and everything. Yeah. And it was actually very helpful because then I went through the binders and I said, okay, these are things that I don't know about him. I understand the Tonight Show, but there were a few more particulars in there that made it possible to really get a great interview from the guy. And over the phone, he was just like, hey, I'm your brother, buddy. You play piano. I play piano too. So what's up? No, so like I said, it was just good. And if I would have talked to you about, was it Jane Meadows or something like that? If it was now, I would have even gone into that and Art Carney, right? Not Art Carney, but he was married to Audrey Meadows and Jane Meadows. He was married to
to the sister of Alice Cramden, who was
that's right,
Jackie Gleason's wife on The Honeymooners.
That's right.
Try to say right,
but you got to figure. He started this whole concept of
the Tonight Show. Yeah,
Tonight Show.
Yeah,
that was him.
Did it for 4 years before Jack Barr came by and weirdly interrupted kind of a flow. But that's another story. The great jazz singer Norah Jones, who had a massive pop hit called "Don't Know Why," and people may not know that Norah Jones is the daughter of the great Ravi Shankar.
That's right, she is, and I still haven't figured that one out.
Yeah.
I don't know, and the fact that she had, her life is Texas, and that she has that whole. When I interviewed her at the Shangri-La, the hotel, in her hotel room there, and it was kind of cool because she was pregnant at the time, going to have a baby, and trying to promote a record, and you're going, here you are, you've already sold like 30 million records, and you're out here, you're pregnant, and you got to do it like everybody else does it. You got to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I start, you know what it is? Sometimes you find like something, you think about it up in front and you go, here's something that would get her. And the moment I mentioned country music and the early thing, what did you do? It's like I mentioned, like Diana Krall did the same thing. Both of them played in hotel lounges or in bars, and they were background to everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to learn the tunes and work on their style and sing a lot.
Yeah.
And she came through that. And I heard things where she was singing like Tennessee Waltz and stuff like this. And I was going, Ravi Shankar, he laid down some tabla on that, or some sitar on Tennessee Waltz, right?
Yeah. So in the reality is that you can call her whatever you want in terms of a musician. She didn't care if you thought her music was country, if you thought it was pop, or if you thought it was jazz. She considered herself more of a jazz musician than anything else, though, right?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
That was her roots, and it was very weird because she's on a jazz label, Blue Note, too.
Yeah.
And she just a discovery because she really, when she started, it was a duo with her another guy that sort of opened the door. A lot of these things with people's lives like this are really by chance.
Yeah.
Just being at the right place with the right song,
And sometimes, such as the case of the artist we're going to talk about next, you're sort of dictated as to where your career is going. And that's what happened to Tommy James, who was Tommy James and the Shondells, Crystal Blue Persuasion. He sort of got tied up with a guy who ran a label who had sort of a sketchy background, to say the least.
Well, you didn't have no choice.
Yeah. So was this guy like an actual mobster?
Oh yeah, that's what he was. He went to prison too.
Wow.
He became the head of MCA Records. And then what he did at MCA Records, he's the head of MCA Records, and you're putting records in the store, right? You're using your normal way to rack records and distribute records, but you're making extra records and you're taking those and selling them out of the back of a trunk, right? And so you're undercutting the musician and the company, and you're making extra cash. This is what the guy did, and he got caught.
Yeah.
But he was also paying off everybody to play records. And the thing was, Tommy James, he goes in there, he's looking at his residuals. He sold, 10 million records. He got $10. He's going, I got to ask this monster to pay me.
That's not uncommon, though, or at least it wasn't as much. Even, but mind you, there's still a lot of people who complain about that today. I got all these plays going on all these various streaming services, and I'm seeing royalty checks over $14 at a crack.
Where's my money? And then you got to go into a guy like this who's tied, and he can just say, okay, you're dead,
Would it be fair to say that of all the people that are featured in this book, and I believe there's 56 different interviews in the third volume of Talk, Conversations in All Keys, that the biggest name would be Tony Bennett?
Yeah, Tony Bennett was, if you look at the biggest name, is Tony Bennett, yeah, by now.
Yeah. But Tony Bennett was so big, even back when you met him, that you must have gone in there thinking, okay, I'm really intimidated. This is very daunting.
Well, yeah, at first, until you had the opening lines. So, Bill, how's it going? And I went, oh man, this is my buddy. And I went, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And yes, the first question, and he answers it. Yes, the next one, he answers it. And he goes, oh, let me go a little farther on that, And you go, wait a minute, who am I with here? And so, you roll through the questions, and like I say, there's one question I asked that I always teach and use in my classes when I teach it, because I asked him, I said, when you have the perfect show? And he goes, well, I learned this from Fred Astaire. The perfect show, Fred told me, is when you think it's perfect, take 15 minutes out. And I go, oh, I love that,
Yeah.
And then we went to things like, I knew how much he was passionate about art. And so I like to go to these other places with people. So I asked him about his painting, and he started talking. I think it was Kinsler, who was one of the great teachers and painters in America. Here's a guy studying with this guy every week in New York City, right? And he's painting in his hotel room. He loved being on the road because he could go on the road and paint.
Yeah.
He spent so much time doing that. But it was also those extra things that in the conversation that, he would speak to you about your publication and other things like it. And he was curious about me. Now, he's probably curious about everybody, but still, when I got done with that conversation, I started transcribing it. I said, this is rich. This is a rich conversation. It's not something I look through where I'm looking for something that's a highlight, because it was all highlights. Yeah. Because he talked about his accompanied piano player, how important it was to have Ralph Sharon with him. And things like this, talking about songs, how he hunted for songs. He would get maybe 60 songs, and Fred Astaire would give him some of his best songs, right? Mm-hmm. So when you step back and you look at the interview, you say, now there's an historical piece. There's something that has a lot of meat to it.
Yep. Yeah. Not only did you have an opportunity, Bill, to interview Tony Bennett, but you photographed him as well. And you're a very accomplished photographer, and I know this.
Yeah,
and what was that
I did it 2 or 3 times, and I expressed this in such a way that once you put your eye to the lens, you're in another world. All right. Yeah. So this is the Montreal Jazz Festival, and that whole front stage is clear, and there's a whole orchestra, maybe 60 pieces behind a scrim. And you just sort of see their shadows and stuff. He comes walking out, right? And he comes to the center of the stage. And this is great because the lights are what they are. He knows this world, man. And he takes the mic and he looks up. And honest to God, Ted, stars came out of his eyes. His eyes are so beautiful. And the lights, they reflected. I went, oh, look at that. It was just like some kind of sweet candy. It just, and the lens, when I shot that, and he had these looks and these poses. And I said, this guy has did this so much. He knows exactly where on the stage that the camera is going to be, where the lens, they're going to shoot the things and they're going to leave. And they're going, I got that moment with Tony Bennett, the same one everybody else got, but it's a great looking photo.
Bill King is my guest. His latest book is called Talk, Conversations in All Keys. It's volume 3 of a trilogy. This one focuses on American music. You and I have been friends for 30 years. I've read your work. I've heard your music. I've seen your photographs. You're doing all those things now. God knows where you find all this time, because most of the time you're on your bicycle. Because you're a cycling fanatic, or you're playing pickup basketball with your son Jesse. Yeah. If there was only one of these things that you could do, it would have to be music. Am I right?
If it was one now, at this point in my life, it'd be a toss-up between writing and photography. You know what it is, Ted? Because I've had 65 years in music.
Yeah.
And then I've had 30.
We should point out that you're 103.
That's right. So I've had 35 years in the photography, and I've only had the last 7 years in writing.
Yeah.
So I am, you know what I mean? The music thing, I don't know what else I could add to the music thing, but I know that in photography, I can add something to it now. Yeah. And with the writing, like I just wrote my thoughts on West Side Story, and I look at that and I go, I can compose and make something that's lyrical, and it has, that is symphonic in the words that I can express. Yeah. So there's other mediums I can do now. I think I love playing and everything like that, but I'm not going to make, the music that I've made, and I enjoy it and I like it for what it is. But I look at this age, I'm really excited about this part of my life now.
Yeah.
And that's where I put a lot of energy.
You write weekly for FYI, which is an online publication, which is being produced courtesy of the Slate Music Foundation, correct?
Yeah, and David Farrell.
And David Farrell.
Yeah.
You're on radio how many times a week now?
Twice. Where
and when?
Tuesday night with my son Jess, doing Soul Nation from 9 to midnight, which is just an unbelievable blast. I will say this. I learned so much the 10 years I was with you. And one of the things I learned was to relax on radio. Because when I started with you, I felt like I had a chain around my neck because I didn't know where I was going with that. But I learned so much with our time on radio that it was only when I was able to work with my brother, with my son, I knew how to work off of somebody, and he adapted to it so well. So that's been great. And then I've been doing 7 years. I've been doing my own show, which is on Saturday. And I have Gloria Martin and Mark Hebscher now alongside me. So we can talk sports. We can talk entertainment. It's like what we did, a magazine format, because somebody had to keep it up,
Well, I enjoyed those 10 years as much, if not more than
more. Oh, man.
You did. I mean, you introduced me to some of the greatest musicians globally, not just here in Canada. Bill King, author, musician, composer, photographer, cyclist, basketball player, sports fan, and proud to say my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Ted, always best, and I love you dearly, my friend.
Love you too, man. All the best, buddy.
Yeah, you take care.
The Ted Wallacham Podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And Helenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Helenda's, the way sausage should taste. The Ted Wallacham Podcast is produced by Joey Roselli. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. I'm Becky Coles. Submit your questions and comments to ted@twmedia.ca.